My name is Destiny, and when I was going through the volunteer slots for this event, this one caught my eye because I feel like art is a really important medium for communicating things like science that sometimes get a bad rap for being, thank you.
Sometimes get a bad rap.
Sometimes get a bad rap for being dry, fact-based things that people don't like to pay attention to, but really they affect our lives in deep and meaningful ways. So I'm excited to see how this performance communicates with that. And so the artists, or the artists here tonight, the performers are Melinda Mueller and Naomi Siegel. And Melinda Mueller was born in Montana and raised in Spokane. She trained as a biologist and is on the science faculty at Seattle Academy of Arts and Sciences. She is the author of 6 books of poetry, including the just published Mary's Dust from Entre Rios Books in 2017. Her book, What the Ice Gets, Shackleton's Antarctic Expedition 1914 to 1916, received a 2001 Washington State Book Award and the American Library Notable Books Award for Poetry in 2002. Melinda was a co-author of an early list of rare, threatened, and endangered plant species of Washington State. Kathleen Flanagan, author of Plume, has this to say about Melinda's most recent book, Mary's Dust. Melinda Mueller's great gift is translating historical detail and scientific fact into profound human experience. Long awaited, Mary's Dust is a tour de force, a clutch of history's Marys speaking through a stunning array of formal constraints, much as they did in life. Each Mary emerges from Mueller's precise and brilliant word choice and imagery to linger with a faint ringing. And Naomi Siegel, a recent Missoula resident, she just moved here in 2016 to be closer to her family and to nature. She's a composer, trombonist, producer, and music educator whose work is geared toward creating authentic expression and connection. In June 2016, she released her debut album, Shoebox View, a 10-song travelogue featuring 13 musicians and cinematically combining folk melodies with fantastical soundscapes and patient arrangements. She is one half of the folk-punk jazz duo Syrinx Effect, a member of Wayne Horvitz's Royal Room Collective Music Ensemble, and an active collaborator in the Missoula and Seattle music scenes, performing regionally and internationally. In 2012, she received the Earshot Jazz Golden Ear Award for Emerging Artist of the Year. As an educator, she teaches privately and in workshop and ensemble settings, working with students to develop their own sound, improvisation skills, and compositional voice. In 2017, she launched Lake Bottom Sound, an organization that enlivens Missoula's creative music scene through concerts, workshops, and improvisation sessions. And we will welcome our performers to the stage.
I think he walked away with one of the books. Which I don't quite have by heart, although close. Thank you so much. Well, good evening, and thank you for coming indoors. I understand last week it just poured rain, but wow, it's beautiful. So thank you. So I'm Melinda Miller. And I was born in Helena, Montana, right up the road, so this feels like coming home. And I'm going to read from the 2 recent books published by my wonderful publisher, who should get a standing ovation because he does beautiful books. Yeah! Thank you, Knox. they really are beautiful, and they're not just beautiful in design, although they are, but Knox's idea about collaboration, which is one of the things we're talking about tonight, between musicians and writers, filmmakers and writers, filmmakers and musicians, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is just mind-blowing to me. I'm kind of gobsmacked that I get to have a work that is, in some sense, in any sense whatsoever, associated with Naomi Siegel and her partner in Syrinx Effect. It's just amazing to me. So you know, both of these books come with music. One of them has a CD in the back, and the other you get a download when you buy the book. And you'll hear some of the music that goes with the after this evening, because it's Naomi's. So I'm going to read first from Mary's Dust, the most recent of these two. And Mary's Dust is a collection of poems in chronological order about historical Marys. The one thing that had to be true is they had to be dead, because otherwise there was just no end of Marys. So I'm going to read three of those that I think connect. I'm going to read all of the book, The After. It's a chapbook. It takes 12, 15 minutes to read. So I'm going to read all of that second. And that's the book for which Naomi and Kate composed a beautiful piece that you will hear. So I'm going to start with Mary's Dust, and I chose three poems from Mary's Dust that connect, I think, with what is going on in the after. I seem to write elegies. Of course, if you write a book about Marys who are dead, you're kind of writing elegies anyway. But yeah, the elegiac seems to come through. So again, three poems from Mary's Dust. And the first of them, it's called Ghost Birds. And it's about a number of Marys, and I'll tell a little backstory for this. The backstory is the island of Molokai in Hawaii, on which was, as some of you probably know, a leper settlement. And the backstory about leprosy in Hawaii and what was done to the Hawaiian people regarding leprosy and being taken away from their families and effectively imprisoned on a remote and inaccessible spit of land on the tip of Molokai Island that there was no getting off of. It's a terrible story, and the story of how they managed is, of course, heroic. And concomitant with that sadness is the sadness of the birds of Hawaii, which have suffered the greatest rate of extinction of any bird fauna anywhere in the world. So all the birds mentioned in this poem are both extinct or thought to be extinct. They have not been seen for many years. And then there are women named who were what were called inmates at the island of Molokai leper settlement. And as it happens, all of their names for the women in here, because of the book, they're all named Mary or Maria or something like that. So, Ghost Birds. The 1920 federal census, island of Molokai, leper settlement. Ula ai Hawani, a small bird patterned in black, gray, and red. Last seen in the early 1890s in Kohala. Habits and voice unknown. Mary Kahi, inmate, Bishop Home for Unprotected Leper Girls and Women, age 14, single, has attended school, can read, can write, trade, none. Oahu O'o, has not been seen since 1837, inmate, McVeigh Home for Caucasian Patients. Mary Smith, probably conspicuous in flight. Nothing else is known. Mary Kawepola, inmate, Kaluapapa Hospital, age 19, voice usually silent. Early accounts describe a clear but quiet whistled song. Single, has attended school, can read, can write. Miriam Kahua has not been reported since the 1860s. Hawaii O'o, immature, entirely black, inmate, Kalaupapa Nursery, age 2 months, little else is known about it. Mary R.E. Laimape, presumed extinct. Voice a long, plaintive whistle. Kioia, widowed, last seen in 1859 near Kaumana. Inmate, Bayview Home for Aged and Helpless. Mary Ward, Kalaupapa Hospital, age 19, trade nun, curious, would approach an observer, has attended school, can read, can write, known only from Molokai, last seen in 1907. Mary Lava Lava, last seen early in 20th century and probably extinct, age 15, single, can read, a loud, melodious voice. Mary Ann A. Kiona survived into 1960s in a Lakaya swamp, possibly now extinct everywhere. A Kealoha, an introduced population destroyed by rats during World War II. Mary Kahiluo Li'i, last seen on Molokai, 1904. Inmate, Bishop Home for Unprotected Leper Girls and Women. Voice aloud, oh, oh. Oloma'o, endemic to Hawaiian islands of Lanai, last seen 1933, Maui, extirpated in historic times, and Molokai, where it clings precariously to existence, frequently calls from concealment. Inmate, has attended school, can read, can write, trade nun, possibly extinct, but rumors of its existence persist, is said to have escaped extinction by feeding on seabird eggs when rabbits destroyed all vegetation. Song is a long, thrush-like, somewhat halting melody with a ventriloquial quality, now seldom, if ever, sings. This one is Radium, for a woman who was born Maria Salomea Sklodowska. I think you'll know who she is. Born 7 November 1867, died 4 July 1934. Radium. As in her native Poland, the ember-colored fox ignites the stubble field it streaks across, ignites even the noonday dusk of the forest floor, as, toddling into her parents' long-ago garden after dark and crouching beside a lantern there, she cried out, "Look, the ants, they have shadows." As religionists rummaged in the body for its soul, that ant shadow, which might be shown on an X-ray plate as a lighter spot on the dark shadow of the bone, so she fractionates the soul of pitchblende, and having pent it in a glass vial, gazes into its blue dazzle. And it gazes into her, being the abyss Nietzsche warned of, and ransacks her, and ignites her bones to ash. Heaven doth with us as we with torches do, nor will she lift from it her hands. And then last, I'm going to read just one section of a longer poem that ends the book. I was raised Catholic, and it shows. And yeah, anytime. So this poem is based on the Catholic Requiem Mass. It has the same sections as the Mass has. And I'll just read the final one. And it's written for a woman I met in Zambia. I've traveled to Zambia a number of times. And a woman I met there was both a nurse and a nun, and her name was Mary Makakutsi. I don't know when she was born, but she died of an illness in December 2007. So the poem is Requiem for Sister Mary Makakutsi. And this is the last section of that poem. I should say red-billed quellias are a bird native to the African continent, and their flocks may be the largest flocks of birds in the world. There may not be another species of bird that flocks in numbers as great as the red-billed quellias. Their flocks can number in the hundreds of thousands. Towards dusk, thousands of red-billed quellias come flocking out of the veld to roost in thorn trees, smoke with wings, ashes with wings. What is Judgment Day but the dead in their scattered parts rising thus, a torrent, a surf beat, roiled molecules, the air riven and pungent as from lightning, flagrant scarves, or a colossus conjured of weightlessness. What is a symphony but beaked notes pouring from staves? They pause into the thickets, spool aloft, settle, feather branches with clamoring foliage, a fountain's droplets splurging up and out, a galaxy, both particle and wave. What is a species but this statistical cloud tendered to time and chance? Darkness folds them into the trees. Thousands of silences fall. Amen. 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 Thank you. So I want to say two more things about that book to give credit where credit is due. Besides my wonderful publisher and designer, the music is by a wonderful Seattle area cellist called Lori Goldston, who once played cello with, I'm a high school teacher, so you know how much this is, how important this is. She once played cello with Nirvana. Can I just say that what I get from my student? Oh yeah. I've done a collaboration with the person who played cello with Nirvana. Life is good. And then in addition, both cover art and some end paper arts is by a wonderful visual artist, Karen Lamott. And there's her work on the cover, and then there's two more of her pieces shown inside the book. So it's gorgeous. The design of the book is wonderful, and I feel unbelievably fortunate to have all of those pieces come together. I said once, I feel like the kid at the adults' table. How'd this happen? Okay, so the after. So I'm just going to read this thing straight through. So let me give just two footnotes I think will be helpful before we start. One is that there are a number of epigraphs and allusions in the poem to other writers, and they're all footnoted in the back, so you'll know. But there's a mention that is a quotation from a medieval manuscript, and it references the trading city of Genoa. So I wanted to tell you what the backstory is there. The plague, we think, that nearly obliterated Europe, came into Europe and was spread out into Europe via trading ships out of Genoa. So the remark that's made from a medieval manuscript references that fact that was known at the time, and is believed, in fact, to be factually correct. And then there's a term used later in the poem, taphonomy, which originally meant the rituals of burial, from a Greek root. It now is used as a scientific term, meaning the manner in which fossils form, the various manners in which fossils form. So I think with that, you have what you need, not to be confused. So here we go, the after. In memoriam, Dusicyon australis, 1876, Falkland Islands. Canuropsis carolinensis, 1918, Cincinnati, United States. Viola Criana, 1930, Lyon de Pontmont, France. Glaucopsyche Xerxes, 1941, San Francisco, United States. Incilius peregrinus, 1989, Reserva Biológica Bosque Nuboso de Monteverde, Costa Rica, and all the rest. We may feel certain that the ordinary succession by generation has never once been broken, and that no cataclysm has desolated the whole world. Charles Darwin, on the Origin of Species. Humboldt saw in South America a parrot which was the sole living creature that could speak a word of the language of a lost tribe. Charles Darwin, The Descent of Man. Before, Montana, high summer, a sky you could strike a match on. The crickets tuned to that keening you hear just before the ether pulls you under. Oh, day. Oh, thistle seeds fledged on every slightest huff of wind. From its thicket of shade, a bird ventures 3 notes, inflected as a question, and then falls dumb. The midges have their little deaths, anon, anon. The after. Speak, Genoa. What have you done? All the words have fallen, golden groves unleaving from the trees and blown away. Radio waves roll out to infinity, bearing their flotsam. Shall fight in the hills, we shall never such in über Sternen zelt, über Sternen muss wohnen, heavy on the turnpike. Oh, dark, dark, dark. Behind them, nothing. Only a long hiss as of surf broken on sand without form and void. Commerce. High tide comes in the night and rummages through the beach falderall, shuffling light white shell shards to the tidal verge above green stuffs of sea wrack and great-fisted cobbles, sounds in the dark hours of the business being done, silks shaken out and gathered up, rattlings of dice, occasionally the deep toll of a stone bell rolled over. Morning, slack tide lulls in indolence, its wares spread out across the sand, picked over by gulls and crows. Whether the world is just not quite fatal hangs on such fine threads. The shooting star primrose gives forth pollen when a bee hovers before its flowers, thorax buzzing at 400 hertz. Absent a G-sharp hum, absent such a bee, the shooting star fails of progeny.
What was the last word?
Progeny.
Progeny, I'm sorry.
Inundated coastal forests sway in cerements of algae under a shivered memory of light. Some things, once named, persist, nameless. Some names are orphaned without correlatives. Narthex, unless the first chamber of a nautilus. Staves, unless staves of rain striking arpeggios on ferns. Ghost genes. In birds, a spectral code for teeth. Gill slits in the embryos of mice. Mishaps, stutters, palimpsests. Lost tribes, still small whispers haunting the DNA. Everywhere, metabolic bewilderment, air wiped blank that was scribbled before with pheromones. Wetlands struck dumb of mating calls. Fireflies, 4 dots, dot dash dot, 4 dots, dot dash dot, gone dark. Bonfires of extinction coalesce into an inferno that burns itself out in time. Natural selection rights itself and commences again the work of ages. Creatures changed utterly that will never be named. Still, trees cast forth their greeny nets and haul in light. Still, rivers ladle themselves over brinks of waterfalls. Still, the clinker-built pangolin gashes termite mounds for grubs. Still, waves prostrate themselves upon the strand as in grief or prayer. There are minnowings in lake shallows. Still, dust devils swirl up the ghosts of all that ever was. Here and there are despoblados, where an immortal death burbles up in the eyes of springs, where torn fire glares on beauty with a rusted mouth, where sunlight-shaken draperies stir up a lethal dust. Never has come to pass in those places. Thus, the laws of burial. Taphonomy 1. The creature, having been inhumed, the body's volatile compounds fume away, leaving a shadow cast in carbon. Taphonomy 2. The creature, having been inhumed, bacteria invest the tissues with pyrite, leaving a burnished and faithful image. Taphonomy 3. The creature, having been inhumed, minerals, commonly silica, rarely opal, supplant every structure, leaving a golem of stone. Snow falls into the arms of gravity, the physical laws being transcended and innate as beauty is. At sunrise, lambent colors exalt the underflanks of clouds, unlooked at, undimmed. By quantum entanglement, by mirror neurons, by E equals mc squared, somewhere beyond Deneb a Cygni, does a tiger look back over her shoulder into a jungle of furious green ideas, or pass into nothingness? Future and past having been sloughed off, the long now unfurls. The prey is seized with terror that dread does not foreshadow. Losses befall, untarnished by regret. The present rises from everything like autumn. A vermilion nothingness shatters across badlands as the sun goes down. Deus obscurandus. The sky's scrim falls away. Earth hurtles into a chasm of stars. Feral angels roar in the treetops, unmoored from the construct of mercy. Oh, what was thought? That spume adrift on unfathomable oceans, that ocean spray tossed up to tangle a moment with the light, that spider's silk spun of nothing and gone.
For those of you who just arrived, Naomi Siegel.
Thank you. Thanks, Melinda. This is a piece that was commissioned to accompany the poem that you heard called After. This piece is called Song for Dead Sparrows, and it was written by Kate Olson and myself, and Kate's not here. I've never performed it without her before, so this will be, well, you can pretend she's like in this box. Song for Dead Sparrows. So this is the part where I just play more music for you, I guess. I think before we do that though, I don't know if you're to be up, does anyone have any questions or about the after or that piece or this collaboration or?
For one thing, I can't imagine what would be filled in, if you can describe what it's like when Kate's doing another part. 'Cause-
Yeah, we did it at Jazzula. So one of those,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, so there's just some extra sounds and I tried to play this written part that she played that's a little out of my range and I just went for it. And it just adds, I think, a little more richness and spectrum of
Yeah.
sounds considering she plays soprano sax
Yeah.
and can make some sounds that I can't make for sure. Yeah, yeah.
I think it was very brave of you to be willing to do that.
It's fun to have to take a piece and see how you can do it in different instrumentations or lack thereof. Yeah.
So why isn't she here?
She lives in Seattle. Yeah, we started that duo. I used to live in Seattle, and that's a project that started there, and we couldn't figure it out for her to get over here for tonight, so. Yeah. But we will be in Seattle performing on October 15th, if anybody's there.
So how did the two of you get this idea to collaborate? Did you already know each other?
We didn't know each other until this is all his fault.
That's Knox Gardner in the blue. Yeah. He's the publisher and the instigator and the creator and the, yeah.
So I've already written the manuscript and gave it to Knox, and then magic happened.
Yeah.
That's basically what it boils down
So
to.
Knox, you already knew Naomi.
I did. So in Seattle, for many years in my neighborhood, I was very interested in kind of some community projects, and one of the ones that I was doing was organizing a jazz walk. And I don't actually listen to a lot of jazz, but our neighborhood used to be a historic core for jazz in Seattle. And so it just seemed like a good fit. But what I am interested in is kind of experimental music and kind of pushing boundaries. And so when I was asking around for a band, and people kept recommending Syrinx Effect, or they'd recommend Naomi, as these people doing improvisation. And I just love their music. I love it so much. Naomi has some CDs here for sale. Syrinx Effect has a new one out finally. I'm so excited. And then when I decided that I was kind of burning out of the community work, I decided I'd do something much easier and become a publisher. Lying! I keep telling everyone it's the hardest thing I've ever done except marriage. And it was just a great privilege to get to, Melinda is quite well known in Seattle for her work, and it was a privilege to get to have a manuscript, and I was just, who would be a good match for this?
Yeah.
And so with a lot of our books, so all of our books, what I'm interested in is collaboration, but the reality is for about half of them, it's really been some matchmaking on my part, and seeing what will happen out of that match. And I think that, and partly that's being a new publisher, people don't know what we're up to or what we're doing. And I think as our press continues to grow, that I'm expecting that we'll start taking on projects that are already people collaborating naturally, you know, that we'll get approached by people doing collaborations more organically than matchmaking.
Matchmaking was real good.
But the matchmaking worked out great.
Matchmaking.
It
We're
worked
pretty
out great.
pleased with the matchmaking.
Yeah, and the CD I think is, now all of our books come with audio. You buy one of our books, there'll be a download, there's a coupon in the back, and you can download the music and the author's reading. And as a writer and a poet, I often hate going to readings, because they're often dull as hell, and also I somehow have a disconnect. But for me, and sometimes same with the writing, you know, you'll read, and I think what's interesting is getting to hear, having the book and getting to hear the poet at the same time. It really can unlock some of it. I mean, The After is a difficult poem to follow, and if you can get a chance to listen to it again, I think you'll see the logic, how it unfurls. And the audio on that, I'm particularly proud of the audio on the After. It starts with the wonderful composition, you get to hear the poem, and then it ends with this 13 minutes of extinct bird song that the Cornell Library graciously let us license. And so by the time you get to the end of this, listening to this extinct bird, your heart's smashed to bits, and I think that's what poetry should be doing. So, yeah. I have a question. I mean, we keep coming back to this, or something that interests me. As it's turned out, most of our books are queer or female writers. And I'm just kind of, one of the things is this idea that is what's unique about women giving testament to the environmental changes that are happening, or, you know, our power structure is very patriarchal, you know, and, you know, so the environmental destruction is caused by men being assholes. So I don't know, I'm just posing that as a question. Is there something unique? I would pose that to the room. Certainly I think it's important.
So I came to environmentalism before there was a name for it. You know, you can do the math. I was born in 1953, so you know, long before there was an Earth Day or all that stuff. And I lived in a house that was right across the street from acres and acres and acres, going on for miles in two directions of ponderosa pine woodland. And I spent my childhood in those woods. And then when I was in middle school, they were bought and built over with houses, and I was bereft. And I think that's where my own sense of, wait a minute, how have we just increased the value of what used to be across the street? No. So that, for me, it was very personal from the get-go. And I don't know whether that relates to me as a woman or not. It grew out of me being a child in love with a place, a wild place. And that hasn't gone away.
Yeah, I would say similarly. I grew up mostly outside of Chicago, but spent my summers in Western North Carolina in the mountains there, and that was the place that I always felt the most free and the most able to be myself and connect with other people, and also to listen in new ways to water running or trees blowing or birds, and so throughout my time as a musician, I've been learning how to listen more and more. And I think listening, well, I was just reading an article the other day. Listening is activism in a way, and it's not, it's often taken for granted. And I would say in my musical life in the last 5 to 8 years, I've been able to carve out more time just to listen. And as a composer, I started a practice where I would go to a place, a natural place. I spent a lot of winters in Costa Rica and one winter in the Gambia, and I found these amazing beaches. And so every day I went and I would just write something, whether or not that is something that became a piece that was recorded later on. But now I have these notebooks of ideas that I still pull out from time to time, and it's a composition practice that I like to continue when I can. I found a sweet spot by the Rattlesnake Creek that's like kind of tucked under, but not too far from my house, but people can't find me.
Gonna start looking.
So I started going there this summer before the smoke, just to write little snippets and to listen to whatever I was hearing internally as well as externally. And so that's a big part of my music as a composer and also as an improviser, always needing to follow the current of the moment and being present in that. So that's, it's very personal for me as well. Yeah.
I'm really curious, you said you go and you write stuff down. Most of the music I hear you play, except when you're playing in the jazz, kind of formal jazz, doesn't seem like it's written music.
Yeah, well, I do plan to play at least a couple more pieces for you today that are written, but I do like to have a lot of space for improvisation as well. And for me, it's about creating landscapes, both for myself to be able to be expressive in the current moment so improvising in that way, but then also when I have an opportunity to play with other people or a band, I want to create spaces for them to explore and express and all of that kind of stuff. But I do like to notate, actually.
Put it out on staff.
I do, and the reason that I do that is because I have found that I tend to go back to those written chunks and I can extrapolate and arrange them and embellish them more than, I do have a million ideas on my, voice memos on my phone, for example.
Yeah.
Those ones I don't tend to go back to as much. They don't live in a place, I don't know, or they live in this electronic place that I don't always want to be in or something, I don't know. So I like to notate.
And on your way out, we do have for free, we have the score
Yeah.
for that piece of music she just played.
And you can
You're
see
welcome.
how there's,
And the score is in the book as well.
Yeah.
With the saxophone.
It's beautiful.
you can see there's a staff for saxophone and a staff for trombone, and so there's the written pieces, and then there's the pieces that are open, that are really just for improvising, and it's all in there.
So, tone notes aren't part of the natural staff in writing music. Do you write down your toe commands?
No.
You just know that you're gonna.
There's a part in
loop
there that says drone, and it's just one bar repeated, and we didn't notate it in a way that it doesn't really look like it continues through the whole last section, but that's just something that we knew. And as a band, Syrinx Effect, looping is a big part of our practice and experimenting with electronic sounds as well.
something. And you probably don't need to write down when you're gonna.
So, no, I don't need to. I do
Yeah.
need to practice it. Although that song is not, the looping isn't rhythmic. I'm going to do some ones that are more rhythmic for you in a little bit. And those ones take a lot more coordination. But it's really, it's always, for me, it's about, and especially my process with Kate, we come together with these ideas and these written little chunks, and then it's like, all right, how do we bring them to life as a duo? Do we use these tools or do we not? And sometimes we don't, and sometimes we do, and so it's about finding new ways to be expressive with those things. Or like the other pieces that I'll play for you, I originally recorded with a bunch of other musicians, and now it's that reduction version of, okay, how can I do this as a soloist? It's a very interesting challenge for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one more question for Melinda. So I saw that you are a biologist. Were you always a writer also? blend the two?
No, in fact, I can't imagine extricating them from each other, but both of them inform. I teach biology at a high school, and I have poetry on the walls. They're inextricable for me, and I've double majored in college as well. They've always been two different aspects of how to understand the world, how to listen, as Naomi said, how to hear what the world is saying. The ponderosa pines that were across the street from my home, they were always persons to me as a child. And, you know, as a scientist, there's this idea of objectivity, and yes, facts matter, but that doesn't mean that things aren't imbued with mystery and beauty. And the science doesn't make them less beautiful to me, the science makes them more beautiful to me. When I first learned that ponderosa pines are able on a foggy day, they can do something that most plants can't do, which is absorb water through their needles and pump it into the ground. Most plants, water only goes one way, it goes roots up. That didn't make the ponderosa pines any less mysterious or wonderful to me. It was like, slick trick. So yeah, they're inextricable for me. All right, well, music.
So this next piece I'm going to play is called Punta Uva, which literally means grape point. I think it sounds way better in Spanish. And it is the name of a beach in Costa Rica. So this is a spot that I found one day when I had a day off of taking care of my nephew in Costa Rica, and I found this beach, and this was literally just what came up. It sounds different now that I have these toys, but... Okay, this next one is a piece that I wrote after walking in the rattlesnake, and right after the election in November, and I had just moved to Montana, and everything felt very disorienting. So this is a piece called Fortifying Love, which was something that I could hold on to try to do during this time. do that? Yeah, go buy some books. And records. I have records and CDs. And, yeah, thank you guys for listening. Thanks for the book